Hey, this is Carlo of 4GQ TV here at MegaCon Orlando, Florida, and I'm here with Phillip Kennedy Johnson. And can you tell me a little bit about yourself, like maybe how you got into comics, the first comic you ever read, or your love of comics?
Yeah, sure, man. I mean, I learned how to read off the comic books. I did not live in a super playful, full of friends and fun kind of house, but there was a lot of reading that happens. And my dad would bring home these boxes of ripped up comic books, and that's how I learned to read English straight up. I just consumed comic books. And almost from the beginning, I wanted to make my own. I was drawing my own comics and writing my own stories and acting them out and everything from the time I was really, really little. I don't remember the first specific comic book that really spoke to me because I don't remember a time before comics really, but I remember a lot of Superman and Batman issues that were really impactful. I remember some World's Finest. I remember some Super Family, Bat Family, 80-page giant kind of books. I remember a bunch of Spider-Man team-ups, like the Marvel team-up series. And that's kind of how I learned the whole Marvel roster, was through Spider-Man and whatever guests and bad guys showed up in that series. Let's see. I mean, that was just such a huge part of my life growing up. And I also was playing a lot of music, and that ended up being my career, actually. I did 20 years as a musician with the military bands in D.C., which I'm just finishing up that career now. And I stepped away from, I was so busy with music for such a long time, I wasn't really reading for fun for a while. Like all the time that I had was going towards my music career and that passion. And then later in life, my younger brother was an artist and wanted to get into comics himself, and I kind of got back into comics through him. Discovered to, love them again, but also I just got that same need to make them again, and I started writing stories for him to illustrate. Really got the bug again, the creative bug, to just learn more about where the state of the art had come to by now, and started working with other artists and just sort of took off.
Do you have any favorite supervillains or superheroes?
Favorite heroes and villains? I still have a lot of affection for Batman and Superman, and those guys just meant so much to me growing up. And Spider-Man too. Those three, I know that's kind of like basic bitch answers, but man, they represent such different power fantasies and such different but such fundamental lessons for everybody. I mean, Spider-Man, of course, is the whole... people kind of boil him down to great power and great responsibility. I guess I boil him down to the idea of can't but must. Like the idea that he is always in some really difficult situation. It's never as easy as just, being strong enough to do anything and then doing what needs to be done and then flying away and everything's happy. With Spider-Man, it's more like he's really got to be someplace by 5 o'clock and something happens and he's got to make a choice, and he makes this choice to help someone at great personal cost. Or, the idea that Spider-Man wins but Peter Parker loses, or this idea that he is gravely underpowered for some threat that has come along, but he has to win anyway. And that's, I don't know, that lesson, can't but must, is kind of what Spider-Man means, in my opinion. For Superman, it's like, Superman is what teaches us to look up, it's the, it just makes us want to be more than we are. Like we just, I just want, whenever anyone's reading my Superman story, I want people to hear John Williams' music in their head. I want to hear that trumpet sailing in the events that are happening in that book. I want people to be inspired to be what that is, to be that person that, stands up for everyone and does what's right. And I don't know, Superman should inspire us to be more than we are. Batman is the thing that teaches us to look in, to try to build ourselves into this force of nature through just sheer will and strength and intelligence and preparation and just hard work. And I don't know, those guys are so crucial to who I was growing up. So those are the heroes that kind of speak to me. There are others, of course. I could go on and on, honestly. But as far as villains, as a writer, I'm always looking for the ones that I feel like have been a little bit underserved, like come across a little one-dimensional. I want to always... My instinct is to take those characters and flesh them out and make them much more interesting and complicated and show everyone that they think they're the good guy, or they think that they're doing something important, or, serving some other thing that we don't know about. That's important to me. So I felt that way about Mongol before starting my Superman run. I feel that way about a I feel that way about a Batman villain that I shouldn't name yet because it's coming up in my Batman and Robin run. Let's see, ones I can talk about. Ones that I think are kind of nicely complicated. I remember liking characters like Man-Bat or the Lizard that kind of got overtaken by their own selfish need for something or their own ambition, or I don't know, just doing something that they felt compelled to do, and then I kind of overtook them and made them into something else. I think Solomon Grundy is awfully cool. Yeah, those are some that come to mind.
And do you have any mentors or people that you looked up to that you kind of maybe learned off of in the industry?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first one that kind of helped get me into comics, that brought me into comics straight up, was Ron Mars. At the time, Ron was writing a column on CBR called Shelf Life. And he talked a lot about his career in comics, but also about how the craft of comics is done, and just had a lot of really interesting anecdotes, but also really important lessons I really admired. And I reached out to, I was writing a blog at the time as I was just figuring out how comics worked. And I reached out to Ron, not realizing, I mean, I was just ignorant as hell. I didn't realize that he had written a lot of the comics I loved as a kid. I reached out to him because I felt like I had this one blog post I thought was kind of similar to some of the stuff he had written. I was like, what do you think I should do with this? What would be a good way to get this out there? And they helped me out and helped me get on CBR, which was really kind and completely not what I didn't ask him to do that. He was really generous. And after that, I just kind of bought him a coffee at a convention, and we just became friends. And after that, he just taught me a lot, introduced me to a lot of people, one of whom was Matthew Dow Smith, who I made my first book with. He introduced me to Philip Sablik at the time of Boom Studios. They helped me get my first book published. Ron just really helped me a ton, more than I could ever have hoped for. Scott Snyder as well. I really admired Scott's craft. Like, I really admired Scott as a writer when I first got back into comic books. So impressed with his stories. I love the creepy but smart tone. Like, I just emulated that, just the style the kind of writer I wanted to be. Like, it's kind of summed up in Scott's work. When I first met him at a signing, I actually brought he has a book of short prose, like a book of short stories that I brought to have signed. Where most were bringing comic books, I brought this book of prose stories he had done. And he noticed that when we spoke and became friends. And I ended up doing the DC Writers Workshop after that, like years later. And he was my teacher in that class and really taught me a lot about form that I hadn't thought about really. And Scott's a great writer, great guy. Has done a lot for the comic industry generally. And I definitely consider both those guys to be my mentors.
And then is there anything that maybe you want to tell your fans that are out there that come up and see you, or any just general advice out there for your fans?
Advice for aspiring creators?
If they want to get into comics or...
Yeah, I heard Charles Soule say something once that was very impactful. He said, be good, be cool, and be around. And what he meant by that, so be good, like you have to study your craft, read a lot, write a lot, get good at this, figure out how to do it, get all the bad stories out of your system to get to the good ones, and hopefully someday the great ones. Be cool, meaning don't be a dick online. just be kind to people. Just be supportive. Be somebody that other people want to work with, that people like to work with, and be around. I mean, just kind of put yourself out there. At that point, you got to start putting your work out there to be read, to be seen. Put yourself out there in the community. Find a good comic store, but also come to conventions like this one and sort of expose yourself to the community and to the industry, and just put your work out there and yourself out there to be judged by your peers. And I would also say that when you start to pitch your books, please understand that you're not just pitching your books; you're also pitching yourself. That's maybe even more important. If you pitch an idea to a publisher and they love it, but they say, "Oh, sorry, that's great, but we're actually putting out a book next year that's very much like that already. We don't really have a place for that book. What else do you have?" If they believe in you, they might ask what else you have to pitch. And when that happens, the answer can't be nothing. You have to have other things that you're also working on, other ideas, hopefully in some state of production, but even if they're not, just other ideas that you want to make, so that you can show them, I don't just have one little idea. I'm not pinning all my hopes and dreams on this one concept. It's going to be my next Hellboy. Because if it's not your next Hellboy, you need, show that you are a writer, not just a guy with one little idea, So I would say, understand you're pitching yourself, trying to convince them that you can be relied upon, that you are reliable, that you are smart, that you are capable, that you can follow through on stuff. That is even more important, really, than the strength of any one idea.
And then the last question I have for you is something that, our fans like to ask. And it's a fun question. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No, obviously. I'm not a fucking monster.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. I hope you had a great MegaCon. Can't wait to see you at your next convention. If you know what conventions you'll be at, you can go ahead and shout them out.
Yeah, I think my next one is going to be AwesomeCon in Washington, D.C. I'm also doing, let's see, I believe I'm doing MuncieCon. I'm doing, let's see, Fan Expo Denver, Fan Expo Dallas. Let's see, Baltimore. I'm doing one in Singapore. I'm doing MCM London, San Diego, New York. I'm doing a ton this year, way more than I've ever done before. So I'm just getting out of the Army now. So I'm going to be opening up my schedule this year quite a bit more.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your service.
Yeah, man, of course.
And have a great day.
It's great to meet you.